look at your practice, if from the moment a patient thinks about you until they leave your practice and exit forever, if that entire process is not high value, high touch, white glove, great experience, you're leaving money on the table. The money is falling out in all those different points and different touch points, because you cannot justify a high price if you don't give that kind of service.
We're seeing a huge increase in capabilities of technology and the use of technology, but I think a lot of practices are over-automating the patient experience. They're over-automating communication with patients. Certainly you want to leverage technology to confirm appointments, etc., help the patient communicate with their practice, but particularly on lead follow-up, etc., to have robots and chat systems take the lead and have first point of contact with patients. It's going to be really difficult to set yourself apart and to start to create this premium brand awareness.
Instead of pushing a treatment, teach and answer questions that are common about the popular treatment. So if people are like, is RF microneedling worth the hype? And that's a conversation you see happening on the internet or in your community, break that down, myth bust, tap into the zeitgeist in the conversation in a teachable way that really allows you to flex and show your expertise, versus saying the best treatment you should do is this.
Look at some of those direct costs more than anything, because those direct costs most oftentimes will impact the bottom line more frequently. But if we're not, spending, efficiently with marketing, with rent, with some of those indirect costs, that's what's going to impact that bottom line as well.
Good evening, and it's 8 o'clock, top of the hour, and welcome to the Business of Aesthetics Annual Expert Panel webinar. This empowering discussion will help you navigate challenges, leverage opportunities, and build a thriving career in aesthetics. Thank you for joining us on our panel of renowned industry leaders as they share actionable strategies, best practices, and certainly valuable insights to tackle the unique leadership challenges faced by aesthetic professionals today. Welcome to our panelists for this webinar, Dr. Tiphany Hall, Andrew Miller, Minou Clark, and Brian Hayes. It is awesome to have all four of you with us tonight, and looking forward to a great hour together. Today, with our Business of Aesthetics expert panel, we're going to be discussing pricing for profit. That's a good thing. Pricing for profit, but how to avoid undervaluing premium treatments. This is a live event, so please engage with your peers, ask questions, and we're confident you will leave equipped with both actionable strategies to implement immediately and perhaps a few great aha moments that can reset something that is a little out of kilter. So, having said all that, but before we dive in, I just want to ask you this. When potential patients in your area search for treatments you offer, does your practice actually show up, or are they finding your competitors instead? This is a major challenge for many aesthetic practice owners. You might be offering amazing services, but if you're not visible online, you're missing out on a steady stream of new patients. The good news, and it's very good news, there's a fix. With the right digital marketing strategy covering local SEO, targeted ads, and funnel-based content marketing, you can not only attract more inquiries, but convert them into actual patients walking through your doors. Now, here's the best part. We've got a solution, but we've even got a better part. The solution is, if you stick around to the end, we've got something special for you, something that can help you take your practice's online presence to the next level. So I encourage you to hang around with us for the whole hour, and I look forward to sharing that with you. But let me go ahead now, and I'm going to just take a moment. I'll introduce myself, and I'm going to introduce our panelists. As I do that, I'm just going to introduce myself first. My name is Michael Walker. As a leadership coach and as a professional mediator, facilitator, I'm passionate about helping set leaders and their teams up for success that matters, helping them lead themselves well so that they can lead others well. With a focus on communication, conflict, and change, my team and I at Capstone Coaching help unlock and engage the full potential of an organization and its people. Our first panelist for this evening is Dr. Tiphany Hall. Dr. Hall is a nationally recognized leader in business growth strategy, revenue optimization, and AI-driven transformation in medical aesthetics. As CGO of Aesthetics Record, she has scaled a premier EMR and practice management platform with zero venture funding. With deep expertise in fintech, compliance, and operations, she spent over a decade educating clinical and administrative professionals. She's a dynamic speaker, advocate for women in STEM. Dr. Hall combines clinical insight with go-to-market innovation, offering sharp, actionable guidance that empowers teams to scale efficiently in complex, highly regulated healthcare environments. Welcome, Dr. Hall. Our second panelist is Andrew Miller. Andrew is a senior financial consultant at Maven, specializing in guiding healthcare clients toward long-term financial success. In 2020, he founded AM Capital to help small businesses during uncertain times by identifying cash flow and investment opportunities in real estate, private equity, and business development. Andrew has worked at Charles Schwab, AFAM Capital, and Kovitz Investment Group, cultivating high net worth relationships and analyzing growth opportunities. He began his career as director of basketball operations, that's quite a shift, at St. Edward's University, helping the team win its first conference championship. Congratulations. And Andrew holds a Bachelor of Science from the University of Texas and an MBA from St. Edward's University. Great to have you here, and feel free to sprinkle in a few basketball metaphors.
Will do, Mike.
Our third panelist for tonight is Minou Clark. Minou is the CEO of Real Self, the go-to destination for all things aesthetics. A former media exec turned beauty tech disruptor, I love that term. She's building a smarter, more transparent future for how people discover and decide on cosmetic treatments. Minou's mission is to cut through the noise, elevate trusted voices, and put power back in the hands of the consumer. Great to have you with us, Minou. Excuse me, our last panelist, our fourth panelist, Brian Hayes. Brian is the founder and president of Orion Strategic Consulting, where he helps aesthetic medical practices achieve clinical excellence and business success. With over 23 years in the industry, Brian has led high-impact teams. Be nice if you could see him, wouldn't it? High-impact teams in sales, marketing, and operations, generating hundreds of millions in revenue and launching multiple startups, including 2 of his own. A seasoned coach and strategist, he focuses on leadership development, team dynamics, strategic planning, and operational efficiency. Based in Greater Boston, Brian also hosts the Practice of Business podcast, offering practical insights and proven frameworks to help practice owners grow with confidence and deliver with exceptional patient care. Brian, it is great to have you with us as well.
Thanks so
You'll
much.
see on your screen now that the main points for today's discussion, and I'm confident we will be able to deliver these points and give you what I would consider an amazing and hopefully a very insightful webinar. We also have some great questions lined up for the panel today, and I'm looking forward to hear their insight, their best practices, and I have a feeling we're going to hear a bit of their passion as well. I mentioned it before that this is live, so I'd encourage you to connect with us through chat on any questions you might have, and for sure your comments as what's been shared. Feel free to raise a hand, thumbs up, put a question in the questionnaire. I will make a point of bringing all the questions to our panelists and making sure that nothing hits the floor, nothing gets left behind. But if for some reason a question comes up that we either run out of time or are not able to answer, or I miss it, I can assure you Whitney, who is our webinar manager on tonight, she will grab those questions, circle back around to our panelists, get the answer, and get back to you. So nothing will get lost. So please feel free to ask questions. The best webinars are the interactive ones. The best ones are, and panelists will say the same thing, the idea of a question that is relevant in real time just ups the game. And so I'll leave that thought with you. So I'm going to go ahead and stop my share, and I'm going to flip over to the questions. There you guys are. And we're going to lead off with the questions. The first question is for Dr. Hall, and it is, how can medical aesthetics practices uncover hidden value in their premium services beyond clinical outcomes, especially when trying to justify higher pricing?
Yeah, I think that's a great, timely question right now in our industry. I think pricing is so over index, we all think about it all the time, but if you look at a practice and the value of the treatment, it's not just the room. I think we get sort of disillusioned that it's just this little room that we're in. It's just this outcome of the treatment. I think the value starts with what you mentioned in the beginning, the funnel from the place where I start to bring the patients into my practice. When they walk in the front door, the front desk experience, how they're treated, how they're greeted. If I know them by name, the personalization of that experience is where it starts. We go into the room, we have a great outcome, we have a superior consultation, which really goes through from soup to nuts what the patient needs. They have a strong plan in front of them, they've got a roadmap, and they commit to a long-term engagement, right? We're not going to get married and be done. We're going to be dating them for a long time. I think part of the value in a practice that can do that is demonstrating the fact that I'm the expert in the room. I know what I'm doing, therefore I should, command a higher price, but also because you've engaged with me, I'm going to give you a plan from today until 3 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road. As you achieve your goals and as you're aging along the way, I'm going to help you through that whole process. I feel like that's a big part of it. It isn't just the treatment today, it's the entire journey of that whole experience. And then when they leave the practice, what is the plan? Are we educating them constantly? Are we bringing them back in for events, for VIP, transformative things they can do because they're a special tier of a patient? There's an emotional psychology of all of it that if I feel like I belong there and I feel special there, the price isn't really part of my world. The value is so much more important to me than what I'm paying that I don't even think about the price. Because if I compare what you're giving me, all of that, to Jane down the street doing my lips for a cheaper price, it isn't even in the same comparison. It's not even the same ballpark. And so I think if you look at your practice, if from the moment a patient thinks about you until they leave your practice and exit forever, if that entire process is not high value, high touch, white glove, great experience, you're leaving money on the table. The money is falling out in all those different points and different touch points because you cannot justify a high price if you don't give that kind of service. So I think if you're looking at your practice saying, what do we do to elevate the game? If every person in the practice is not prescribed to this sort of affluent mentality, this high touch, white glove service, it's hard to, pardon me, it's hard to justify them spending a higher price point with you if the outcomes at the end of the day are the same. We're all, hopefully everyone's a great injector, they're a great clinician. That's not a differentiator, that's table stakes. What makes the difference is the experience that surrounds that treatment. That's what you come in, that's what you pay for, that's what you come back for, and you want to keep getting, hopefully for many years to come.
Very well placed, Dr. Hall. I really think something that jumps to mind when you say that, in my world, my background is actually hospitality industry as well as a mediator, but it's our goal was always in the hospitality industry was anybody can meet somebody's needs. I want to buy a ball and here's the ball. To exceed their needs means that I'm not just going to give them the ball, what they want and what they need, but I'm going to give them a glove that they might need to use with that.
Yeah, we all for a safe place to sleep. If the Ritz-Carlton has the same bed as like the Hilton, but you pay for the Ritz-Carlton experience, right? You're okay.
Exactly.
It feels better, it feels different.
And so what we focused on was how do we unexpectedly delight the customer? And we found that if we empowered the housekeepers with a budget to notice what's in the room in the garbage, like a Mars bar and an empty Coke can. I'm not promoting Mars or Coke. And all of a sudden that guest the next night comes in the room and what's sitting on the counter with a little note. And we built the teams around the people that were really customer faced and had a relationship that was already exceptional because of the relationship they with the room and the person. And it was phenomenal. And actually, the Four Seasons chain, that's when I was involved in the development of putting that position out against the Ritz-Carlton, and that's what we did. And I think in this industry, I see it's just a beautiful gift because but you have to, as you said, you have to be so intentional with it. It's not, you can't sort of hit and miss it. It has to be strategic, it has to be laid out. It has to be done in a way that everybody owns it. They're not just participating, if that makes sense. So anyway, I get going, I get excited about that stuff. So I'm going to stop right now. Thank you. The next question is for you, Andrew. And what are the most overlooked indirect costs in aesthetic practices that significantly impact treatment profitability, and how should practices account for them in pricing decisions?
So it may even
Andrew, before you answer that, I just want to throw something out if I could. I forgot to do this. And Andrew tonight, Andrew is not, his wife is not having a baby. Let's put it this way. Here with us. But Steve Keen, who was going to be with us, his wife just had a baby. And Andrew is part of the same team and has stepped in to fill the gap. And Andrew, we so appreciate you doing that. And sorry, I cut you off on that, but I just
Oh no, you're fine. And if you wanted a basketball reference, call me the sixth man, next man up type of idea here.
love
So,
that.
but no, at Maven, as fractional CFOs, we like to say that, there's really no cost that's overlooked to to a degree in the aesthetic world. But in our line of work, we look a lot at the direct cost, which is the cost of goods and, payroll from a profitability standpoint. But some of those indirect costs, I don't think they're necessarily overlooked. I just don't know if maybe practices know how to utilize them to a degree. And, one of those is marketing. It's like, what is marketing? And a lot of it is that patient acquisition cost. And, people want to spend on marketing, to try and drive that revenue, but they don't really understand what the actual cost is. What's the cost of a lead, the cost of a consult, to get people into the practice. So they just, again, they want to throw money at that, quote unquote line item, to not use a finance term, but I think it's overlooked of being efficient with that more than anything. So again, we like to look at some of those direct costs more than anything, because those direct costs most oftentimes will impact the bottom line more frequently. But if we're not, spending, efficiently with marketing, with rent, with some of those indirect costs, that's what's going to impact that bottom line as well.
Thank you, Andrew. Yeah, that's. I think it's one of the. I think one of the greater challenges in the industry is that there's a lot of folks that are, in some regards, accidental entrepreneurs. They don't necessarily have a finance background, a business background, and they're kind of winging it. And
Mhm.
it's not a great place to wing these days with where costs are. But I just think it's about being intentional with the costs and understanding that. So I think just the way you've broken that down really brings that. I think maybe that's going to be the word tonight, about being intentional and that intentionality to considering your costs. I like that.
And just to add a little more to that as well on the marketing fronts, but since we're on the topic of the indirect costs, it's we see a lot as well where people are spending a lot of marketing, but maybe they don't have that foundation built in the practice to, support the number of leads that are coming in. So they could be overspending to a degree with marketing, and it's impacting that bottom line because they don't have that foundational support within the practice to support the marketing leads that are coming through the door or over the phone as well. So, the marketing could be working, but they may not have the right team in place to support it. So that's, again, indirect costs that are, not being utilized efficiently.
Yeah. Thank you, Andrew. Um, Minou, I have a question for you. And in an era where patients do their own research, don't they, before stepping into a practice, what are the most effective digital strategies for showcasing premium value without sounding salesy or defensive about pricing?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and digital is so oversaturated with noise. It's hard to cut through it, but I do really believe more than wanting a deal, patients want a reason to book. They've probably looked at 6 different providers, read 12 reviews, watched like 30 TikToks before they even consider the reason they would click book. And I think the most important sort of pillars to give them that reason are really anchored in transparency, transformation, and authority. Um, Starting with the first one, I think the before and after photos really can be helpful if they are authentic and they show true understanding of what that exact treatment could look like on a patient that resembles them and their beauty goals. And so I think before and after photos that have detailed context, like the age of the patient, what their goal was, what they were looking for, what was used on them, your technique, the results shown at 3 weeks, like transformation steps throughout that journey, not just the before and not just the after, but the things that give you all the context. That will really give patients trust in what they're signing up for without the ambiguity of like an overly filtered retouch before and after that's lacking all of that context that would give them real understanding of what they're truthfully signing up for. You want them to walk away happy with the result, and that comes from their education and the context around what actually happened when they're doing their research. So I think before and after photos go a long way, especially if they can show kind of restraint or like artistry from the provider, show how they're really treating people like individuals based off their specific customized goals, not just templates. That tends to really resonate, especially with the real self audience who's looking at, a massive, massive encyclopedic library of reviews from our own consumers. We've seen that authenticity, that individuality is what provides context that leads to that trust. And really, I think the thoughtful customization where the patient's not just like a product or a result, but is an individual on a beauty journey that was really thoughtfully and intentionally crafted for them, that humanizes this. And I think that is what takes you from the TikTok that maybe gave you an idea that probably lacked a lot of education and context to, okay, I actually know what I'm getting into. This speaks to me on a human level and speaks to my sort of lived experience. I think the other piece is really educating like a confident expert instead of a salesperson. And what I mean by that is instead of pushing a treatment, teach and answer questions that are common about the popular treatment. So if people are like, is RF microneedling worth the hype? And that's a conversation you see happening on the internet or in your community, break that down, myth bust, tap into the zeitgeist in the conversation in a teachable way that really allows you to flex and show your expertise versus saying the best treatment you should do is this. I think really framing it around the conversation that's naturally happening among consumers as an expert and someone who can really help spill the tea with confidence, with data, with education, that framework in how you educate is really critical because it just establishes more of that trust and expertise without you sounding like you're pushing something or pressuring something specific. And then I think the other pieces that are important here to kind of position yourself favorably, especially across digital, is instead of just positioning the product or treatment as what you're selling, I would position your technique as the premium. And that means, lots of people can offer the same exact injectable, but consumers are curious about what makes you specifically different and how you use them. So, sharing something anecdotal about, we use ultrasound guidance for something, or we are trained in like a micro droplet technique for under eye filler, or whatever it is that you've coined, you've really honed, that sets you apart in your administration of what you're doing. That is sometimes what really builds more of that confidence, but also gives you some individuality in a sea of options for the consumer. So it adds a little bit of scarcity and skill to what might sometimes feel a little bit commoditized. So I think that goes a really long way. And then just the other thing that I think really helps is being super transparent about the pricing, but anchoring that in the outcomes. Don't hide your price list behind scheduling a consult as much as possible. I think premium buyers really want the result. And so if you're framing the price against the result and you're being really clear about, if there's a range or if it depends on a full consultation or a post-care kit or an optional touch-up, all those different packaged items that impact someone's wallet can persuade them to feel like they're actually, willing to book because they're getting these add-ons and these bells and whistles that actually are pretty meaningful to them. Because ultimately, it's someone's face or body, it's high stakes. None of these things are really cheap to do. And so consumers are going to be choosy and they want to know you're not only good at what you do, you not only understand the consumer conversation around what you do, but you have a technique or an expertise that's unique to you. And your pricing is super clear and feels incredible because you're also really clear on the result that's attached to it. I think those things work in unison to really position you favorably in ways that go a long way because, again, like there's no shortage of everyone sort of trying to peddle different things at the same time or peddle the same exact treatment. So those are the different levers we've seen really help convert our audience at scale.
Oh, thank you, Minou. So the three drivers you were talking about, obviously transparency, customization, and authority. And I think when you look at that, I was thinking one of the things we find that's really effective, reviews are very powerful in the Google realm, but they become just everybody's got one, and is it real? It's the idea, and some of that Echo Marketing, the company that I was talking about earlier, and we'll talk a bit about that at the end. But the idea is how do you draw in love stories? And the love story it comes back up to your customization. It's a beauty journey. I was at ABC Clinic in Minou. She just made me feel like beauty was something that I could have and I could enjoy. And we did this, this, and this. And it's this idea of personal, and we're seeing a real shift in the marketplace that when it becomes, because that creates a pre-qualified lead, that now they've already got a relationship that's been established by somebody else who trusts what happened. And it's just such a powerful journey. But I think it again, it goes back to being intentional. I love the way you put that. If the photos being authentic, the beauty journey, and the confident expert. I mean, people want to know that you know what the heck you're doing when you're sticking a needle in their face. I get that. I totally get that. And because as a customer, I can see that. So thank you for that and sharing that. And I like the idea of creating what is your unique selling position, the technique, as you said, or and the relationships. They're so critical in this. Relationships, kind of back to Dr. Hall, of a relationship's going to potentially sell more and bring more customers back and their friends back than the treatment itself specifically. And how are we intentional with that? Thank you. Brian, you all set? Feels like we've been here for a long time. We're just getting to you.
I'm good.
Brian, from your work turning around underperforming practices, what are some common mindset or leadership mistakes owners make when setting or defending premium pricing?
Yeah, I think to the question, I mean, my answer is going to really, I think, piggyback on a lot of what's already been shared by everyone so far, particularly by Dr. Hall and Minou. First, I would say in general it's a general catch-all category, but I'd say not adapting to the current business landscape. And what I mean by that is not just that, hey, maybe things are a little slower this year than they've been, et cetera. I mean, over the last several years, all the competition that we're talking about, for sure, it's a more crowded space. It's more competitive. It's harder to stand out and get attention. But quite frankly, it's a lot harder even if your messaging is so similar to everyone else's. And I think what we see with this is a lot of practices that tend to lead with the practical and the clinical. So they'll lead with brand name products and procedures, the things that are most popular, hottest, et cetera. But from a patient's perspective, back to Minou's point, you have a patient that's searching, comparing information, et cetera. Now they feel they have a base of knowledge. So now they can start calling different practices, and they're going to hear a lot of the same messaging that only takes us down a path of commoditization. And so it's understandable that from a patient's perspective, they don't understand what they should be looking for, particularly if they're new to their journey. And so they're going to use price as a tiebreaker. And so it's going to be really difficult to command premium pricing if you've really led with a lot of the same messaging that they hear from a lot of other practices. So it's really, I think has been said, to lead with what makes you special, unique, different, your approach, your methodology, how you treat patients, the experience that you provide, like a Ritz-Carlton. If we're using a Ritz-Carlton analogy, they don't start by advertising the thread count of their sheets. That's in there somewhere, but that's not the lead. And so really, I think changing what the priority is and what your primary message is to the patients. I think second to that is trying to serve all patients. If we're talking about premium pricing and we're talking about creating high levels of value, the reality is you're not going to be able to do that for every single patient. Value is subjective. We all value different things. For some people, they might be thinking, well, I would never stay at a Four Seasons. Why pay so much for a hotel? Right? So we need to be speaking to the type of patient that's going to see value in what we offer. And so we can't do that just treating every single patient and offering every service under the sun. And third, I would say to this point is we're seeing a huge increase in capabilities of technology and the use of technology. But I think a lot of practices are over-automating the patient experience. They're over-automating communication with patients. Certainly, you want to leverage technology to confirm appointments, et cetera, help the patient communicate with their practice, but particularly on lead follow-up, et cetera, to have robots and chat systems take the lead and have first point of contact with patients. It's going to be really difficult to to set yourself apart and to start to create this premium brand awareness. And again, Ritz-Carlton, Four Seasons, they utilize technology, but they're not swapping out their front desk people for iPads to check yourself in. They want to keep that human experience. They know that the people are a critical part of what makes them special and unique, that ultimately allows them to charge that premium pricing.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. That's really well put. I remember speaking of in the hotel thing, was talking about with Virgin Airlines, they have an unexpectedly delight concept and how they give their people the latitude to make decisions, and talking about Virgin Air. And these folks were supposed to get on a flight and it was booked. They couldn't get on. The Virgin Air agent tried a couple other places, went to other airlines, and he just couldn't find any flights to get these people on. So they literally booked a private jet and flew these people where they had to go. These people were not, it wasn't Steve Jobs, or they were customers. And when that got into the organization and people heard that they did that, the person got promoted. They don't want everybody, they didn't want everybody buying corporate jets, but they empowered them with the capacity to be intuitive about how to add value to that experience in the time. And obviously we have to recognize budget, but I think what usually happens, Brian, to your point, is it falls short if people don't own it from a heartfelt passion perspective that aligns to the brand. If you can't say what are you passionate about in a sentence, then how do you expect anyone else to be able to engage in that? And I've just seen that a lot with these kind of concepts. They get started, but they run out of passion gas, if that makes sense.
It does.
Yeah. So let's go back up to you, Dr. Hall. And in a highly competitive aesthetics market, how should practices navigate the tension between staying competitive and avoiding a race to the bottom on pricing? Yeah, that commodity pricing is not a good friend.
Well, I think Brian said he had all the magic. He said all the things I wanted to say, but
Yeah.
I think there's a couple of things that he mentioned there that I would really focus on. I think first of all is know who you want to be. Are you going to be, high margin, low volume, or low margin, high volume? Like, what is your practice going to look like from a DNA standpoint? Because that's going to dictate what the race to the bottom looks like for you. If you're going to be low volume, high margin, you're looking for those high income patients, very affluent, and you're going to do a full face correction, a $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 treatment. Very different how you market, how you show up, who you hire, how you interact, than say those, quick turn and burn practices. Neither is right or wrong. It's just a very different model. So I think that's one thing, is like, know who you are, because to change that midway through is a bit challenging. So I think as you start out or even think about your rebrand, if you're in that process, know that, number one. But the other part of that is, who is your patient? You don't want everyone. And I think the patient, for me, if I'm in this practice and I'm going to be that, high margin, the patient who is worried about the race to the bottom isn't the one for me. I want to go find patients who will pay what I'm worth, right? If I'm going to communicate value, I'm going to show my expertise. I've got great reviews. I've got, great before and afters, all the things that we just talked about. If I have all that, there's a true value proposition there. I don't want the patient who's looking for the cheapest price, right? They're not the fit for me. And so I think if you look at your, we call it ICP in the business world, but if you're looking at your, your ideal client profile, who is that person? And go find more of them, which will require you to get out of the practice, to get out of the automation probably, and go actually do like what we call guerrilla warfare, like boots on the ground, figuring out how to go out and do actual human to human marketing, which might be, I find out who the patient is, who is that ideal customer for me. And I say, how do I find her? Where does she live? What does she do? Who is she into? What are her hobbies? And go find more of her. Really leaning into that human marketing element, that sort of human referral network. I think the other part of that too is you look at patients who come in, give them options. I think the proprietary service that Minou mentioned is so critical. I can get lip filler anywhere, but to get your signature lip pop or your signature hydration plump, whatever you want to call it, to get that thing, it's hard to compare that apples to apples. I can't go down the street and say, does Jane Doe have the same procedure? Because she doesn't have that on her menu. You do, right? It's your personal brand, your personal technique or trademark. I think the proprietary service idea as a differentiator is absolutely critical right now, because we can get the same products anywhere. And if you're a practice who's marketing those products, you're doing the work for them, not for you, right? Your brand is important. Market yourself, market your procedure, your name, the things that you're doing. I don't need to market the manufacturers, right? They get enough on their own. They have enough money of their own. I want to market my procedures and how I'm doing them. And then if I go to somebody else, if I have a patient, I can't compare apples to apples. So I think you immediately differentiate yourself because you offer a different version. It might just be semantics, it might just be the name, but what things can you add into that make it feel different, unique, more superior, more premium? And then lastly, I would say, as far as like the AI part of it, I agree, Brian, we over-index a bit now with AI, but there is a part of this that's like a personal marketing, I guess, bias, where if I know what they've been receiving, I get their invoices, there's a tag in my CRM that says she's received filler and toxin and whatever else she's received. If I can figure out the patient journey based on that and say, I know at what point in this journey she's going to want the next thing, then to offer her that when she wants it most does not feel like it's a price premium. It's like, gosh, I thought about that and it just showed up in my inbox. I knew her propensity model, or I knew what she was going to do next based on my package, my bundles, what my EMR says. To know what she wants before she wants it, to send that to her in an email or a text and say, hey, by the way, this thing is, our highlight for the month, come in and get it done. That feels personal to me and very much a specific thing to my need. I'll pay more for that because you just knew what I wanted when I wanted it most. I think there's a part of it that you can use technology to feel very human and very custom. And if you use it that way, it's a different sell than saying we're going to use AI and bots for everything. And so if you look at pricing tiers, memberships, delivering that message at the right time in the right moment for the right patient, to me, those things, they just sort of exude value and exude premium. And so the race to the bottom doesn't really touch you. I think you sort of build a moat around your practice where they can all fight about the bottom dweller, right? The bargain basement patient. I'm going after affluent patients who want value, who perceive what I'm offering as a higher tier. And then I don't have to worry about the rest of it. The fringe kind of falls away. And so I think if you look at who you are, who you want to be, what your patient type is, and then do whatever you can to make them feel included and special, the pricing and the negative sort of the race to the bottom falls away, and I don't have a competitor anymore. I'm sort of on my own island, building my own brand independently.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Hall. I love that. I think the value for money, if it's in the commodity, then you're going to be in commodity pricing. But if it's rooted in the relationship and the value-added beauty experience, then that's hard to quantify, which helps hold the price point and stay away from that commodity mindset. I love the way you put that. Okay, let's go up to Andrew. And Andrew, the question I have for you is, what financial warning signs indicate that a practice may be underpricing its services or relying too heavily on discounts? And how can owners use benchmarks to get back on track? Well, that's a great question. Did we just lose him? We did. Oh, okay. We'll come back around to Brian. What happened to him? Maybe I upset him. His wife wasn't having a baby. Who knows? Just okay, let's go. So that means I'm going to go to you, Minou, and we'll. And the question I have for you is, how are today's aesthetic consumers evaluating the value of premium treatments online, and what messaging actually moves them from research to booking? Isn't that just that's it right there? If we get the secret sauce.
Yeah, definitely. And I think themes of what I'm going to say have definitely been touched on pretty eloquently by everybody here. But ultimately, what really gets you to convert from looking at something to booking something is really, first and foremost, consumers want to see real results. They don't really care what the brand says the treatment does. They want to see what it actually looks like on someone with their skin, around their age, similar beauty goals. They're really scrutinizing before and afters for that. They want the natural results. They want the consistency, not just a one-off treatment with one good before and after. And they want to see progress over time, not just a week post-treatment, but really longer term. I also think a big piece of this is just, it's about the entire journey for the consumer. They're reading between the lines. Like, did this person feel taken care of when they got the treatment? Do they feel like they got what they paid for when they got the treatment? Was the provider communicative? Was the downtime what was promised? Was the environment luxe, calming, clean, soothing? A lot of what, Tiphany was really hitting on earlier. It's not just the product that they're paying for, like you're buying an apple at a grocery store, but it's the ambiance of the grocery store and where was the apple grown and like, how does it work into your personal diet and digestive system? It's very custom to the whole experience and everything in the multiverse that kind of surrounds it. I think that is really what takes you from that initial curiosity point, consideration point, all the way down the funnel to booking and being in someone's office. And I think the other piece too, that we've touched on many times, but is worth, commenting on here because it's a big factor in booking, is pricing. And to me, like, price is a signal, not a barrier. consumers who are really interested in aesthetics, they're super high intent to begin with. And they sometimes see like high price as a proxy for safety or efficacy or expertise. I think really underpriced deals can set alarms off in their heads at times and feel like it's a bit of a danger alert. So they want to understand the value of why something is, $800 instead of $400. They're willing to pay that premium if that why is super clear. How long will it last? What's the downtime? What makes it better than X, Y, or Z? What makes you better than X, Y, or Z? As long as they understand the cost relative to longevity, downtime, quality, it's no longer really a number, it's a quality signal. And that can really help drive someone to a decision. And then I think the other piece is just the review factor. They really want to see social proof and lived experiences from consumers who represent them. They trust someone who's really been through it, who matches them demographically, but also who matches their beauty goals or beauty concerns. So those peer reviews, those influencer experiences, those TikTok deep dives, if they're done with education and expertise, those play a really pivotal role in kind of peeling back the curtain and breaking the fourth wall and getting your prospective patient to have a really realistic expectation and understanding of a treatment or procedure as it would pertain to them from your practice. So I think that's a really critical piece, and understanding, will this work for me? Do I trust this provider? And is it worth the money and time? And will I still look like me, but hit the goals that I'm looking to hit? And so those things in unison kind of work together to take you from a piece of content that can go viral, but convert to $0 to something that maybe gets a quarter the amount of views, but converts at a really high rate. And turns out the riches might be in the niches with how you position stuff. So I feel like those things tend to work together. I see a lot of things as someone who's had a career in digital and in social go viral all the time and not convert. Those vanity numbers are exciting, but what you want is people to really book and show up. And I do find oftentimes these sort of pillars are what kind of make all the difference in something that's scaling just for scale. And it's like a blip, it's viral and it's gone. And this thing that really becomes a business driver.
Well, you caught me at riches in the niches. I like that. That's a soundbite.
Even though I would pronounce it niche, but
I know, but where you can eat the niches, it works. It works.
Yeah.
It's enough of a provoker that it'll get somebody to stop. And if they correct you, they heard it. That's the good news, right?
Yes.
So, Andrew, we lost you for a minute.
Yeah, sorry,
did you
guys.
get us all coffee?
No, we lost power for about 30 seconds and had to restart everything. So we're just, rolling with the punches over
All
here
right,
today.
we're good. I've got a question for you.
Sure.
And the question is, what financial warning signs indicate that a practice may be underpricing its services or relying too heavily on discounts? And how can owners use benchmarks to get back on track?
So usually the biggest telltale sign with underpricing is when we start to look at our cost of goods on a financial basis. If revenue, for example, is remaining, stagnant or, even year over year, but our cost of goods continues to go up, we usually say we're either giving away too much for free or, we are underpriced to a degree as well. So that's usually the biggest way that we can tell that, the third way is, people are taking product home for themselves, but we don't like to assume that is that's happening. So that's usually the biggest indicator for us, is looking at those cost of goods on a financial basis to identify if services are underpriced on a regular basis. So, and with that, we usually, it's going to be or it's going to be dependent on, practice by practice, in the sense of what's the service mix. Are we heavy on injectables? Are we heavy on laser? Is it an esthetician only practice, which we've seen a few of those come across Maven. So with that, there's going to be different levels of benchmarks that we look at, but typically, the biggest sign is cost of goods increasing, revenue remaining the same and or decreasing. And that's usually the biggest indicator that we need to adjust our pricing, or we're giving too much away for free to the consumer.
Perfect. Thank you, Andrew. I said you just described in those categories what would probably be wise information to have on your financial dashboard that you can quickly access and read and interpret and adjust accordingly. So thank you for that. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, so Brian, a question for you. How should practices incorporate strategic planning into their pricing structure, especially when launching new services or expanding into premium offerings? We've been talking about premium offerings a lot, and we've probably got some viewers that they're just thinking about it. What is?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think the key to the question there is the word strategic, and not to be the English professor and be pedantic about the language and the term, et cetera. But I think it's critically important that your pricing be a strategy, that it's tied to the overall strategy of your practice, the business strategy. And I think, again, piggybacking on some of the things that Minou and Tiphany shared, that your strategy, if you go to Michael Porter, who's thought of as the guru of business strategy, the Harvard professor, he really talks about that the essence of all business strategy is differentiating your business from all the others to your ideal customers. So with that, as Tiphany talked about, what type of practice do you want to be? Are you going to offer a variety of services? Are you going to be low touch? Are you going to be high volume, et cetera? Or are you going to be more niche focused? Are you going to be specialized? Specialization doesn't mean you only do one thing, but that these are the things we focus on. Maybe it's face, maybe it's body. We're going to be more focused and specialized, and we're going to be high touch. And so we're going to create great experiences. Again, we're going to follow more the Ritz-Carlton Four Seasons model. So that's lots of personalization, lots of interaction with patients, lots of communication about what makes us special. So if we decide what type of practice we want to be first, and then we focus on who our ideal patients are. So if that's the type of practice we want to be, who are we going to serve best? Who do we serve? What do our patients look like, as specific as possible? And from that, how will we serve them? What are we going to do that makes it special over and above the clinical performance, over and above the treatments that we offer? How are we going to do that makes us unique and special? And if we can put all that together into a strategy, then the pricing model flows naturally off of that. If we can communicate clearly, this is what we do, this is what makes us special, these are the patients we serve, and we can do that effectively, then typically you should be in a great position to charge a premium for your services and maintain that premium. And ultimately, over time, just like Louis Vuitton or Four Seasons, over time, as your brand gains strength, it's only going to compound return to everything you do. You're going to be able to even charge higher prices and maintain your pricing over time. So it's really tied to your overall business strategy. They're not independent.
Thank you, Brian. Yeah, I totally can see that. I think that you said pricing is a strategy, this idea that it's fundamental, but it's also the underpinning of the position you're going to take in the market. And often you see teams, they kind of have the vision, they want to do it, but the pricing's not matching up, and they're struggling trying to hit margins, and it's where pricing has to come at the early point, which reflects that brand. And you articulated that perfectly. Thank you. Dr. Hall, question for you. Can you share specific strategies for leveraging EMR and practice management data to inform dynamic pricing and reveal high margin treatment opportunities?
Yeah, this is kind of my wheelhouse. My everyday life is EMR management. I think there's a few things I would say. First of all, you have to have the mindset that if it's garbage in, it's garbage out. So in your EMR, to even start this conversation, if you're not tracking your cost of goods sold, if you're not tracking the lot numbers that you're using, what you're paying for a certain batch from the manufacturer, if you have coupons or not, if you've got reward programs and things, you've got to track everything in your EMR. Otherwise, you don't know if you have a high margin service because you don't have good data. So step one is look at your books tonight, look at your EMR and say, do I have the right amount per unit of toxin used, per syringe used? What are the input costs, medical supplies I should account for? There's a whole part of this where you think things are in your gut. Without the data, you don't have any idea what's actually happening. So number one is get your cost structure correct inside your system. And as you do that, if you're looking at a system that's really going a chart level, I know what I'm charting per patient, per day, per month. You've got really great data. You can start to look at, are there seasonal abnormalities? Are there things that were popular last summer but not this summer? Is there a reason why it's not that way? Is there, a thing happening in your market? Is it an economy issue? You'll start to see things that will emerge as like your winners that consistently in every season provide you value. They're constantly being booked. They have a great patient retention rate. They help to drive your business overall. They're just like a good workhorse product. Those are the things that you never put on sale, right? They're going to come for that all the time anyway. Don't discount that service. It's going to bring folks in. I feel like this is a very much a toxin conversation. We're going to come get wrinkles regardless, right? We want to come get that done every so many months. To give a huge discount on that doesn't make sense to me as a practice. I'm already moving that product. I'm already selling that product pretty effectively. And my EMR will tell me that patients are coming in, let's say 2.1 times a year, 4 times a year for the service. It's the things that are surprising to you that you can really lean into. For instance, if I get toxin twice, maybe my third visit is typically microneedling or it's typically a filler. Knowing that information from your EMR of what the patient journey looks like on visit 3 or visit 4, they get this thing, I can start to sort of map them toward that and know that the ROI for the lifetime of the patient is going to change because of those different steps in the process. But if I don't have good data and I don't track things accordingly, I can't tell that, right? We know that sort of from the get-go. But I do think in your EMR, looking at seasonal issues or patients who are all of a sudden a big spender, your top 20%, your top VIPs, how did they get there? What was their gateway drug for your practice? Was it coming in with a toxin discount from somewhere? Was it coming in with a lip filler or a PLLA treatment? What got them into practice? Is there some kind of a common ground there that you're seeing for patients who come in with this particular thing or this need? They tend to stay longer, spend more, come back more often. I mean, there's not so many ways to grow a business, right? They got to either come back more often, spend more money, or have to have more of them, or increase your prices, right? There's really 4 ways to grow a business. If I can get them to come back in more often because of a treatment or because of a typical patient does this thing every time, if I can just get them on this map, they'll follow that same kind of mindset, that sort of behavioral analytics part of it. Your EMR will tell you that in real time objectively. We often have this like a bias of our own of, well, I've seen 8 patients a day who wanted X product. It's our hot seller. Well, actually, no one wanted it at all last week, week before. It just happened to be today they wanted it. So I think your EMR really grounds you in what is the reality of your system and what's the reality of your practice and what you're seeing. But I do think you can start to see some data sort of, appear for you, especially using, again, AI tools. You can put a lot of this into an AI tool, make sure you have a HIPAA BAA in place, but you can start to analyze your data, anonymize it if you want to, but analyze the trends and see what are the loss leaders and things that I'm going to always lose on. I don't care because if they came in for that, they always become a huge part of our practice. They become a huge spender for us. So if I lose in the beginning, it's a marketing expense, right? I'm okay to lose on visit 1 because I'm going to make more on the back end. I think if you look at your discounting and your promotions, to me, that's how you discount. If I know that this one discount is going to make me money long term because it's how they get in the practice and I can turn that into a much bigger business later on, I'm okay with that discount. If it's going to be a discount from now until forever, I'm not okay with that discount. And so I think learning from your EMR what the data tells you and what the propensity is of your patients and what they want from you, it also can tell you what you don't have. If they tend to drop off at a certain point always and they go somewhere else, it's like, I don't have that device. I don't have that thing that should be next in their journey. I don't have it. And if I want to keep them here, I'm going to have that thing because I can start to see on the 4th or 5th visit for this treatment, they always end up going somewhere else. Or memberships start to churn, whatever those things are that really look at flags for you. But if you're not in those numbers all day long and it's not very sexy, it's not very fun, but you can use some tools to help you, but you've got to be in that number, in that data all day, at least thinking through like, what can I do? How are my patients behaving in the practice? When you understand that and you understand what they're doing from day to day with you and engaging with you, I think it's much easier to price, to promote, to get them back in the chair, and to obviously have a higher price point with more value because you know what they want. Again, when they want it at the right time, you deliver the message to their inbox or their text message saying, come in and get this thing done today. It's waiting for you.
Thank you, Dr. Hall. I think if I was to sum that up, data is your best friend for growth, and we need to be intentional with it. There's that word again. I've seen the coin. Andrew, and as I'm watching our time, well, the next question I have is for you is, Andrew, can you describe a financial model or framework that practices can use to design profitable premium packages without compromising value or margin?
And sure, and that's a several prong question, but to what Dr. Hall was saying, the data into the EMR is extremely valuable, especially with us when we're helping clients come up with either package or membership models, because of one of the first things that we look at is how profitable or not profitable these services and procedures. And a lot of times clients want to give away the farm without actually looking at the data. And they think if I have a recurring membership with or a recurring package with 2,000 customers that I'm going to be profitable. And usually that's not the case because they're giving away too much via discount. So the first thing is we want to make sure, hey, what are we discounting? And again, to what Dr. Hall was saying, are they already coming in for that? Because again, if they are, we don't necessarily have to include that in this, package model or a membership model. And then this, on top of that is who are the providers that are going to be, performing this? What sort of time? Are they going to be doing these services and how long does it take? And again, that goes into the bottom line, margin and value. So really just to kind of, I can kind of go all day on this, but again, the EMR, having that right data, looking at value per appointment, value per treatment, what are our cost of goods for each one, so that way we can design a package. So, again, we're not giving away too much and it doesn't kill us on that bottom line. I think is going to, the key takeaways there.
Thank you, Andrew. Again, just reinforcing what you were saying before, you need to be intentional with your data. It is a dashboard. If you haven't got a dashboard of information assembled that gives you the key indicators that help you guide that to Dr. Hall's point, that daily input, it's very easy for a ship to drift off. It only takes half a degree, and in 20 feet, that's a lot more than half a degree. So I just encourage you to be intentional with your information in all aspects. And so again, I think we have time for just one more question. And I think we're almost out of time here. See, it's 8:54. Minou, you're next up. The question I have for you is, what role does transparency around pricing, outcomes, and provider credentials play in driving trust and commanding premium pricing online?
Yeah, I mean, to me, what we're seeing is that transparency is not really a nice to have anymore. It's kind of the currency of trust. In aesthetics, trust is what allows you to charge that premium price without flinching. And so bringing transparency around the pricing is going to drive the consumer's confidence in the value you're giving them. So from, the trends across the real self audience, consumers really equate hidden pricing with like shady upsells or like low experience, and they equate transparent pricing with like maturity, confidence, professionalism, expertise. What really tends to work well for us is listing ranges, not just base prices, since things can depend on volume and product, and really framing the value. So, why does it cost more maybe with you? Is it because your injectors have a decade plus years of experience, or they do X, Y, or Z better than others? There's a premium technique that you've coined or you've really honed that sets you apart. I think premium consumers are going to lean in, and like the budget hunters are going to self-select out, and everyone ends up kind of happier. I think it also gets to things that were being said earlier. You don't want like the customer who's penny pinching and looking for a Groupon bargain. That's not someone who's probably realistic or educated in what they're getting. They're not seeking value. And so that's what can result in all kinds of weird fuddy-duddy discourse and noise on the internet. And I think it's baked in a lot of lack of education from the consumer. So being really transparent with pricing, why it's premium, why it's worth it, you'll attract the premium consumer that you want, and you'll kind of weed out those budget hunters who ultimately I don't necessarily know you want to attract. And I think also the transparency around the outcome is what's going to really allow for consumers to trust and care about the pricing. If they're really understanding what they're getting, they're buying a result, they're not buying Botox. They're buying what Botox can provide to their beauty journey. So selling them on the result is really important. I think having like a lot of caption honesty and like what the patient wanted, what they were looking for, what you then advised them that might have been slightly different than what they said they wanted, how you educated them. Those are things that really allow you to justify premium pricing in a way that showcases your education, but it's not preachy because you're really providing a lived experience that's authentic and real. And then I think the transparency around credentials too, like there is a safety premium people will pay. Consumers want to trust your expertise. They don't speak, med spa jargon. So you need to kind of find a very clear and concise way to spell out your expertise and training in a way that is digestible and speaks to them. Literally like plain English bios, like keeping it simple, throwing in your subtle flexes, like they trained in this technique or they mentored under this iconic doctor. Also, just patient facing logic is really helpful. Like we charge more because we invest in ongoing safety training and blah, blah, blah. I think making your expertise transparent, clear, digestible, that allows for that pricing to feel super justified. And I think a bonus is also just, again, the transparency will only help filter out the wrong patients. You want to attract value seekers, not deal seekers. And you want people who, you're reducing your time spent on consults that don't ultimately convert, So I think ultimately being really upfront and digestible in how you frame all that up, it saves you a lot of time and it gets you better, it attracts better like-minded value patients who then get value in return.
Thank you, and you thank you very much, and kind of great way for us to shift gears here. The question I often invite teams to ask their each other is, how do we build trust, and then how do we share it? And looking at that in the context of what you've been sharing, I think that we can't assume trust. It has to be earned. It has to be inculcated into the culture. And I love the way you put that. But I'm going to need to share my screen and make a shift here, folks. I just want to thank you. So it's as we've kind of come to that time together where we need to start wrapping up. It's been awesome, and boy, oh boy, just some wonderful real-time best practices, great sound bites. And I do want to, as you may recall, I did mention to you that we do have a very interesting gift for you. And you'll see a QR card you can scan. And here's the gift. And it's from the founder of the Business of Aesthetics Expert Panel webinar. So who puts all this together, Narain Arul-Raja. Narain is the CEO of Equa Marketing. And they are a digital marketing organization for doctors and medical professionals, and particularly in the aesthetics industry. As a token of our appreciation of your time and participation, Narain is offering you a free marketing strategy meeting with Lila Stone, who is the Business of Aesthetics and Marketing Director of Equa Marketing. Lila has established herself as a trusted expert in digital marketing and is passionate about empowering medical professionals with the marketing tools and knowledge to stand out in a competitive market. You can see on the slide before you, there's a whole lot of specialization she has, and I'm sure you probably find yours as well. This gift, as I say, is from Narain, and it is really the idea here with Narain. It's not to try and his whole philosophy is how can I help invest in the areas where I have seen significant growth and change. And it's this idea of the digital footprint. Now, some of you that are high IT or you already have this, you probably say, well, I already know all that. I've got that. But if you don't, this is where this is going to be really helpful. So I just encourage you to go ahead and scan the code on your screen, or you can go to businessofesthetics.org /MSM, Michael S. Michael, /X panels, EXPANELS. And you can go ahead and book a complimentary session with Lila. You can scan that code and do that right away. And you also find it'll be posted in the chat here as well. So you'll be able to see that address as well in the chat. But when these kind of opportunities, I kind of look at it through two questions. The first question I have for anything like this would be, what's at risk for me to do this? Well, we all know there's all kinds of sales tactics and pressure tactics and all that stuff. Well, I can assure you that's not what this is. This is Narain generally investing in this industry and has a passion for it. So what's at risk to do this? Well, it's just your time, but your time is super valuable, and we appreciate you spending it tonight with us. But I encourage you to take some time. I know that what Lila actually spends about 4 or 5 hours researching what you already have up there, what you're already doing, what's working, what's not, and gives you a report that actually has an incredible breakdown of the effectiveness or lack thereof of effectiveness in certain areas. So the second question, if it's what's at risk to do this, what's at risk not to? Well, if this isn't your thing, then it's probably a good idea to invest in this. And if you are looking for new customers, if you're looking at establishing yourself in a new market, if you're looking at starting a new practice, this is a perfect timing gift for you. And so I will leave that with you. And that takes me to thank you. First of all, thank you to our expert panel, Dr. Tiphany Hall, Andrew Miller, Minou Clark, and Brian Hayes, pardon me. So much insight best practices and actionable content. I've said that a couple of times, but I think we have proven it. Collectively, you've made the complex simple, the hidden visible, and what I would say the difficult somewhat more easy. Secondly, thank you to all our attendees for the privilege of your time and your participation. Without you, we don't grow together and we don't set each other up for success. A reminder to like, share, send us a love note, a review on your favorite social media, and you can be part of someone else's success. So until next time, and on behalf of our panelists tonight, keep striving for excellence and exceptional patient care. Thanks, Mike Walker. Till next time.